This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, we are officially recording. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, guys, Mark, you do sound a little quiet now.
Well, turn me up. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Okay.
Guys, Mark is joining me for this episode today.
Hola.
And we're not going to do any chit-chat in the beginning, except for one thing, because I just actually started checking my emails, my Death by Southwest emails and voicemails just now. I meant to do it earlier. And so I didn't get through all of them, but I saw that, but I heard a voicemail from Jay, and he was saying that Jay from Texas, he really liked the last episode on Stephen Kocher. And I got to say, I felt good about that episode. I know I've said this before, but some episodes I do it, and something about how I've organized the information, or I don't know, the mood that I'm in, I can feel it like flows good. I feel like I'm telling it well. And I was thinking about that when I was driving over here. We're at Mark's house. I was like, I don't want to jinx myself, but I already feel a little bit this story that we're doing today. I've already mentioned it. What are you knocking for?
On wood.
Knocking on wood. Good. Got it. This story is so huge and was so huge. Somehow I never heard of it. I'm hoping Mark never heard of it. But I'm guessing that a lot of our listeners have heard of it, which is why I wanted to tell it to you, Mark, because I think it's interesting sometimes to hear other people's reactions to a story, especially if you've already heard it. And I know that several of our listeners have because they've messaged me about it. And so I want to give
What if I've heard it?
Well, then I guess you can pretend like you haven't heard it or hear it again.
I'll be shocked like, oh my God.
Yeah, like let's hear your best acting.
It was kind of rude that you didn't mention the beautifully crafted mesquite table that I was knocking on.
Were you looking for a little plug there about the table?
I was like,
well, I have certainly shared about your woodworking before, but for those who haven't heard, Mark is an exceptional woodworker and has a beautiful live edge mesquite table, coffee table that he built and crafted the wood. I mean, he didn't like craft the wood, but he got the wood from a tree.
Why? Cut down the tree.
Yes.
Milled the wood and then dried it and then turned it into a table.
There you go.
But just for people who know, I live in Arizona. I do not believe in cutting down trees. These were coming down at a job site, so they were going to get killed anyway. So
there you go. I like that. Good. Thanks for adding that in. Now I'm going to add in a disclaimer about this episode, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay.
For those of you who have heard this story, this story has been covered in many, many true crime documentaries, TV shows. There are several books written. Just about every podcast, true crime podcast out there has covered this. There are entire podcast series dedicated to this story. So I have spent about a week researching and writing this story. I feel like I could probably spend 6 months and I would still be finding new stuff. So please know that yeah, I've spent about a week. There is a ton more information out there. I'm sure that there will be parts that I have missed, but I'm going to do the very best that I can to tell an interesting story with the information that I have in front of me. Okay?
I know you'll nail it, sweetheart.
Thank you. We'll see.
I'm going to do my best to listen.
Okay, great. That's your literal only job.
All right, fine. I'm going to turn off the TV for this one.
Thanks so much. So our story today takes place in, well, mostly in West Valley City, Utah. Have you ever been there?
Absolutely not. I've been to Salt Lake City.
Oh, I haven't been there either. I haven't been to Salt Lake, but I would love to go.
But I wasn't like in there. I was like in the airport there.
Okay.
Like a little changeover going to
That doesn't really count.
Well, that's kind of a thing.
Okay.
I've been to Salt Lake City.
That's true. I mean, I guess you literally have. Yeah. Okay. The population in West Valley City, Utah is approximately 134,000. It is in Salt Lake County. Hot summers, snowy winters. I would like to go to Salt Lake City because there seems to be snow there quite a bit. And like I said in the last episode, or sometime recently, I feel like I said that I would literally cut off a finger to look outside and see snow right now, which is still stands true as we near Christmas.
I don't think it's going to happen, even if you chop your finger off.
No, I think you're probably...
I don't know. It's been such a hot, like, summer and warm here. It could happen.
No.
That's always the rarity out here, though, in Arizona and Tucson especially. It's like, oh, it's 90 degrees. The next day, boom, snow.
I mean, I'm hoping, but I'm not counting on it. So,
I mean, when I was like 17, it was like 75 the day before, and then it snowed on Easter.
Yeah, I've been here before when it snowed.
My dad had to wipe the snow off the Model T, you know? Because I'm so old.
I didn't even have to make a joke there. You just made fun of yourself. Okay. So West Valley City, looking on a map, it looks like it is slightly south and slightly west from Salt Lake City, but really very close to Salt Lake City.
Interesting.
It's a suburb of Salt Lake City in Utah. Yeah, about 140,000. As far as interesting information, there really wasn't much. It's one of the fastest growing cities in Utah, apparently. It's known for a lot of diversity, apparently. There's a significant Hispanic and Asian population, and there's lots of different cultural attractions. The city played a significant role in the 2002 Winter Olympics, hosting several events. We've definitely done episodes that take place in Salt Lake City, and this is very close to there.
It's like Phoenix,
similar.
where it's like Gilbert.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
There's only 130,000 people in Gilbert. There's 8 million up in Phoenix area.
That's kind of how I feel like this is. So that's our little. Well, and for those who don't, I do sometimes forget that we have plenty of listeners who not only don't live in the Southwest, but some don't even live in this country. So for people who are unfamiliar with Utah is...
And who don't have Google.
Well, maybe people aren't
I'm joking.
Googling while they're listening. Utah is directly above Arizona, and it is one of the states that make up the four corners: Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. And that's it. That's all I have to say about it. And now we're going to jump into the story of Susan Powell. So sit back and relax a little bit. You look like you're ready to jump up.
Easy. I am relaxed.
Okay. So Susan Powell I saw that she was born in Alamogordo, New Mexico. I also saw that she was born in Alaska, or that she just lived in Alaska for a period of time. I don't know. But Alamogordo, New Mexico is one of my favorite places I've ever been. I've told you about it, Mark. It's where that little town Cloudcroft is.
Oh, yeah.
That me and Izzy drove through. We lost cell phone service. It went from 75 degrees to 30 degrees in a matter of minutes.
And it looked like the town from?
Yes, it kind of does. I mean, no, but it's a little weird town. Anyways, not Alamogordo. Cloudcroft is. Alamogordo is the bigger surrounding town. Really cool place if anybody gets a chance to go there. Again, some of the I saw conflicting information about her life growing up, which most of the information out there, once somebody either goes missing or is murdered, it's focused on that and not on their childhood growing up. So this was a case that had such extensive media coverage that a lot of the stuff about her and who she was as a person prior to this case got kind of lost, I think. And that's unfortunately, I don't have much information. She did spend much of her childhood in a place called Puyallup. Yep, that's how I'm going to say it. Puyallup, Washington.
Probably wrong.
I mean, it's.
I'm going to say that.
Okay, I'm not. We're going to move on because I spent a lot of time on words that I mispronounced.
What, in Washington?
Yes, it's Puyallup. Puyallup.
Sounds like a Native American.
Puyallup. Either way.
Puyallup.
That's how I'm saying it.
Okay.
Her family moved there when she was young, so she spent much of her childhood there. She went to high school there. She graduated from high school there in the year 2000. She was, those people who knew her said she was very warm, open. She was a bright and thoughtful child. She had a good upbringing, it seemed like. Really loving parents. Faith was a big part of their family. They were, her family was part of the Church of Latter-day Saints, so Mormon. She was just also described as a teenager as very creative and artistic. She was active in her church and her community. She had a strong social life and also maintained the values that were instilled in her growing up. So it sounds like she had a really nice childhood. Great. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add something to, I know you guys haven't done the lookup list in like a long time, but I know Mormon, like there's a huge amount, like in Mexico.
In Mexico.
Mexico.
Oh,
South
really?
America, yeah. Because like the whole business back in the day, they weren't very accepted. So down in Mexico, like there was a story about it. I don't know if that's maybe one you could do, where this like couple families, like they're like locked up down there. They like have like they got a community and they're like protecting it, But they went down there, so it's like there's a bunch of like blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Spanish-speaking Mormons down in Mexico. I forget exactly where it is.
I do think I knew that actually,
but I didn't know like as much about it until I don't know, it was years ago. But the cartel or something like mistook them for someone else.
Yeah.
They had like Suburbans. And
you told me about this.
Like just gunned them down.
Well, there you go. Now I can't tell the story. You just told it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, Jesus. No, but like they're serious down there. Like they have guns and shit, and they're like, "Oh yeah."
Well, I mean, you have to, depending on the environment you live in. So that makes sense.
Guns are kind of illegal in Mexico, unless you're a cartel or you're Mormon.
Okay. Well, I will look into that. That's a good suggestion. So Susan had a good childhood. Seems that she had a very nice childhood, a good upbringing, loving family. Now we're going to talk about Joshua Powell. So Susan's maiden name was Cox, C-O-X. And eventually she becomes Susan Powell because she meets Joshua Powell. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. I have a lot more information, unfortunately, on his childhood.
What's his maiden name? Tree?
Whoa. But
you did
all
it.
Right. Joshua was born January 20th, 1976. Susan was born in 81, so he's a few years older than her. He was also born in Puyallup, Washington, because I'm sticking with that pronunciation.
Okay.
His parents were Stephen and I'd never heard this name before, Terica, but she went by Terry. Interesting name.
Terica?
Yeah, weird, okay. Right? He had 4 siblings, 2 brothers, Michael and John, and 2 sisters, Jennifer and Alina. And he did not have such a nice childhood growing up. He grew up in a very troubled childhood, marked with a lot of abuse and a strained relationship with the LDS Church. His father, Steve, and mother, Terica, filed for divorce in 1992. Steve had left the LDS Church in the mid-1980s and become very, very anti-Mormon. And his wife was not. So this caused a lot of problems in their marriage.
That sounds like a real problem.
Yeah, it caused a lot of problems.
It's kind of like,
a big conflict, yes, of interest. But that was not the only problem. So court files showed that the divorce of Steve and Terica involved not only conflicts over their parenting styles and religion, certainly, but allegations of mental unfitness, pornography addiction, polygamy, and witchcraft.
Wow, no wonder it didn't sit well with the LDS.
Yeah, well, no wonder the marriage didn't work out. So Steve claimed that his wife, she studied herbs and natural healing, and he thought that she had mixed New Age mysticism with Mormon beliefs in a way that kind of amounted to witchcraft and devil worship. And Terica said that Steve...
We're going to call her Terry.
Terry, yeah. Steve's interest in pornography corrupted him. And many people believe that the downfall of Steve was his strong addiction to pornography. The further he got into porn, the further he kind of became not a great person. He also...
Imagine if he had access to porn like people do today.
Right. Well,
Off the fucking deep end.
He shared his porn. He shared porn, a lot of porn, serious porn, hardcore porn with his sons when they were very young. He would leave magazines out, videos out. He would put it on. I read a story that he went on a trip with one of his daughters. They were traveling somewhere. They got a hotel for the night, and same hotel room, maybe 2 beds, one room. Put on like hardcore porn with his like 8-year-old daughter laying right there, and she was so uncomfortable. She like went under the covers and didn't know what to do. He just was very.
That's creepy as fuck.
Yeah, very, very creepy. Something that was noted, and this is, I don't know whether it's here or there, but Terry noted in her divorce papers that when Stephen was a young boy, her husband, he was a victim of parental kidnapping, and that made her fearful that he may try to take their 2 youngest children. And I was like, what? Apparently, when he was a young boy, his dad like kidnapped him away from his mom and moved him to Ohio or something, and then eventually he gave him back. So sounds like Steve had a very troubled upbringing, and then that was then transferred on to his children, and Joshua was really, really seems to have suffered. I don't want to say the most because it sounds like all the kids suffered, but Steve seemed to take a real interest in Joshua, and not in a good way. Again, exposed to lots of pornography, failed to set appropriate boundaries. And this kind of fucked with Josh's head from a young age. In 1992, so Josh was, 13, 14?
He was born in 76?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't talking to the mic.
Yeah. His brother, one of his brothers liked a girl, had a crush on a girl. And apparently Josh made a comment and said, all she's good for is her body, right, Dad? Like that was kind of the mentality that women were just there for sex, and that was it.
What did Dad say?
Dad probably agreed with him because that's kind of what his dad taught him. As a teenager, as he grew into a teenager, his behavior got more and more disturbing. He killed his sister's pet gerbils in a pretty violent way, and then made his sister like touch their blood.
Jesus.
When Terry asked him to do the dishes one night, he went up to her and threatened her with a butcher knife and said, "Don't push it, Mom." He also tried to hang himself when he was 13 years old. It was a deeply dysfunctional family environment, and he, from what I understand, received a lot of physical, certainly emotional, but also physical, psychological abuse from his dad. And the extreme exposure to pornography had definitely had a damaging impact on him as he became an adult. In the late 1990s, that's something that there is a lot more information out there.
About the late 1990s?
No. About his childhood, but I feel like that's, you get the idea. We don't have to berate that idea. So in the late 1990s, he attended the University of Washington in Tacoma, and he met Catherine Terry Everett at an LDS church congregation and began a relationship with her. The relationship was filled with extremely controlling behavior from Josh, including restricting her contact with her family and monitoring her activities.
Always a bad sign.
Yeah. When she was able to go to Utah and visit her family, but she didn't ask his permission, he apparently lost his mind, was very upset, and she chose not to return to Washington. She called him, broke up with him, and never went back to Washington. I think she just she left all her stuff. I mean, she could tell he was not a good guy.
Probably a smart move,
Very smart move. Unfortunately, Susan did not recognize those signs quite so early. Susan and Josh met in November 2000. It's so weird. I saw one article that said they met at a dinner party hosted at Josh's Tacoma apartment. I also saw something that said that they met at a Mormon singles ward in Puyallup, Washington.
But didn't she graduate in 2000?
Yes, this was very soon after she graduated from high school that they met.
Oh, okay.
She was 18.
That's appropriate high school age.
Yes. So they were also classmates at the LDS Church Institute of Religion. So that was just, I guess there's a church where you kind of like Bible study, I'm assuming, something like that.
I would imagine.
They began dating.
Well, it's the Book of Mormon study.
Right. Yes. They began dating and they got married in April 2001 at the Portland, Oregon Temple. That's weird. They were in Washington. Well,
there's more Mormons than just Utah, you know?
Yeah. So Susan apparently was a trained cosmetologist, but later in life she became a stockbroker. So,
really?
It's weird. I actually...
This story is actually very interesting. She's
Yeah.
like, let me do your hair, sweetheart. And then she's like, it's trade those stocks.
See, this doesn't make sense. Oh, she was a trained cosmetologist, but she didn't work as a cosmetologist. She worked for Wells Fargo Investments after the family moved to West Valley City, Utah, a suburb of Salt Lake City. Right. Quote, Susan and Josh got married, and he seemed to have come around pretty well. He seemed to be in a pretty decent place, and I had really high hopes for their marriage, that it would be a successful, happy, good one. And she's saying that because he obviously was very troubled as a teen, and his previous relationship didn't work out. And then Susan's sister said, at the very beginning, they were, happy, holding hands, hugging, kissing each other. You thought that they were a perfect couple, a very happy couple. Well, shortly after their wedding, Joshua and Susan moved in with Joshua's father, Stephen.
What?
Yeah.
Bad news bears.
Yeah, in South Hill, Washington. And Stephen very quickly developed an obsessive infatuation with Susan. He spied on her with a camcorder, stole her underwear, read her journals, and in 2003, he confessed his feelings for Susan to her. She rejected them. Apparently, this confession was inadvertently recorded by Stephen's camcorder. I wasn't able to find that recording. Stephen also had suggested to Josh, his son, that Susan could become a common wife to both of them. Like,
oh yeah, so,
they
son,
could just share her.
Thought just came through my head,
Right. Stephen made comments like, people are just animals anyway. We ought to be able to have sex with anyone, anytime we please. And I read that quote several times and I thought, like, how could somebody actually, like, maybe that's what you want, but how could you actually think that you should be able to have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want? That just shows that his mind was...
That's a little fucked.
Yeah. So in 2004, Josh and Susan moved out of Washington. A big part of that was...
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, to get away from Joshua's dad, Stephen.
I think it would be like overnight after he's like, I'm still in your underwear videotaping you and I'm in love with you or I want to have sex with you.
Yes.
Josh was like, you know what, let's, get the fuck out of Washington.
You would think, but no. Susan
were they like hard up for cash or something? Like, were they like not making money or something?
I don't know. I mean,
guess they were young.
They were young. They were recently married. It was just a convenient thing, I'm assuming. Apparently, marital issues kind of started soon after that. Josh started refusing attending church with her. She didn't want him to have contact with his dad, and he continued to have contact with his dad. Many of Susan's friends said that Josh was extremely controlling and also had extravagant spending habits. And I have a few quotes from some of the friends and family members. One of their neighbors said, "We all love Susan and we tolerate Josh because he comes along. He's part of the package." That's at least how most people feel. Susan is always worrying about other people, whereas Josh is the opposite. He's only ever concerned about himself, which makes things sometimes a little difficult. People reported that Josh's controlling behavior was well known. Like, it wasn't a secret. Everybody knew that he was super controlling. Their friend group talked about it. Susan had to get his permission just to use the family car. She had to also follow a strict procedure whenever she spent money. So one of her friends described this procedure and said Josh would give Susan a set amount of money for grocery shopping. She had to compare prices from all the ads, like coupons and find the cheapest options. When she went shopping, she was required to enter every single item into a spreadsheet. And if she spent even a few cents more than Joshua deemed was acceptable, he would get very angry, yell at her, it was like
no
a
wonder
whole
she was a
thing.
good banker.
Yeah, apparently. He wouldn't even this was just a little anecdote. He wouldn't let her spend money on socks. He asked her to knit her own socks instead.
Well, they sound like comfy socks.
I mean, I guess so.
It's like the opposite of me. I'm like, hey, how long has that been in the oven? You're all, doesn't matter. I'm just doing it.
Okay. This isn't about you.
I'm wondering.
So they also had eventually 2 sons. They had Charlie, who was born January 19th, 2005. And then they had Braden, who was born January 2nd, 2007. And with the first son that they had, Joshua refused to drive Susan to the hospital when she went into labor. He insisted that her parents take her. He was like, your parents have to take you. I have to finish doing something. And according to Susan's dad, what he had to finish doing was backing up his hard drive. That's what was so urgent that he couldn't take his wife in labor to the hospital.
Well, maybe he didn't want to lose all that porn.
That's quite possible. So her parents took her, and he showed up about 2 hours later.
If I said that to you, you wouldn't be the first one in the hospital. I would be because you killed me.
That's absolutely right.
I
I
back
would.
up my hard drive. I'm just going to, finish the Sopranos.
I would kill
right
you.
now.
So apparently Susan had considered, even at this point, leaving Josh, but would never do so because she was scared of what would happen to their children. Susan's sister said, when I told her to leave with the kids, she told me that he had said, over my dead body will you have those boys. They're mine. The boys were a possession to him more than children. They not only were having trouble in their marriage, but in 2007, Josh filed for bankruptcy with over $200,000 in debts. I don't have
what they were about.
Yeah, I don't have any more information on that. And things were pretty bad at this point. In June of 2008, Susan wrote a letter. I also saw, I just got nervous that I had pressed stop recording when we took a break a moment ago, but I didn't. All right, keep going. So in 2008, Susan wrote a letter. I also saw it described as a will. It was addressed to family and friends, warning them of Josh. In the letter, she says that Josh threatened to destroy her if she filed for divorce. She also said, there is extreme turmoil in our marriage, and if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. She kept that letter in her safe deposit box, which only she had access to. She also recorded a video of herself the next day documenting all of her family assets. And I do have that video, which I will perhaps post part of it. But in the beginning of it, she says in the video, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. I hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
That's not a good sign.
Not a good sign. So that was in 2008. And now we are going to flash forward to Sunday, December 6th, 2009. Susan's 28. And she takes her 2 sons on this Sunday. They go to church in the morning. Later in the afternoon, a neighbor came over and visited with them and left around 5 p.m. Also around 5 p.m., Josh said, I'm going to take the boys sledding. Around 8:30 p.m., a neighbor sees Josh return home and pull into the garage. And around 11:45 p.m. that night, a neighbor heard a car alarm coming from inside the Powell's closed garage. All the lights in the home appeared to be off. Okay.
Interesting.
Monday, December 7th, between 9 and 10 a.m., the daycare that Charlie and Braden went to every day called Josh's mom, Terry, and his sister and said, we've been trying to get a hold of Josh. We've been trying to get a hold of Susan. And we can't get a hold of either of them. And the boys aren't here. So we just want to make sure everything's okay. Susan also did not show up at work that day. So Terry, Josh's mom, and sister Jennifer trying to call Josh, trying to call Susan, not getting a hold of either of them. They have no idea where anybody is. So they call the police. The police met them at Susan and Josh's house. Appeared no one was home. So the police broke into the house because they thought,
Yeah, we got to check it out.
we got to check it out. They were afraid, apparently, of a carbon monoxide poisoning.
Because the car, maybe it's mine. We don't
Right.
know. We don't know.
But no one was there. They did note that there were 2 big box fans blowing on a wet spot on the couch.
That's
Didn't know what it
sketchy
was.
as Fuck.
Susan's purse, wallet, and ID were inside the house, but no cell phone and no Susan. And later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., Josh returned home with the 2 boys and is greeted by the police, who is like, they're like, where's Susan? What's going on? He doesn't know where Susan is. So Susan is officially reported missing at this time. They obviously talked to Josh and they asked to look in his car, and they look in his car and they find Susan's cell phone in his van that he just had arrived home in with the boys, but her SIM card was removed. Police also discovered a generator, blankets, a gas canister, tarps, and a shovel in the van. And they immediately took him to the West Valley City Police Department for questioning.
Yeah, no shit. It's like, what up?
So they asked, where are you coming from? And he said, well, a little after midnight last night, Susan was sleeping. I saw one article that said, where he said Susan was sleeping. She had cleaned up. We got a red stain on the couch and she was cleaning that up and then she fell asleep. And so I left her at home and I took the kids camping last night.
Oh, okay. At midnight.
At midnight in December in Salt Lake City. So it's maybe
he's trying to toughen up the boys, Like, get them like, hey, we're going to wake up in the middle of the night and go into the cold ass winter.
After midnight, they went into, it was like literally a blizzard. So it's freezing cold, and drove them 2 hours away to the Pony Express Trail in western Utah. Okay, that makes literally no sense. Police also were like, this is weird. Yeah. Why would you take your 2-year-old and your 4-year-old camping at midnight 2 hours away in a blizzard? Like, what are you It literally makes no sense. But okay, he stuck to that. They asked him, why aren't you answering you got to move your cell phone.
That's your cell phone.
My cell phone's on the ground.
It was your cell phone.
They asked, sorry guys, we heard a buzzing. When your cell phone gets too close to the recorder, it does that. So the police also asked Joshua, why weren't you answering your cell phone? Like, the daycare called you, your mom called you, what's up?
He thought I was in a blizzard.
He said, I didn't have a charger and I was trying to conserve battery. But a detective had noticed that Joshua's phone had been plugged into the charger in his van when he came home.
Oh, so bullshit.
Police also asked about Susan's cell phone. Why do you have Susan's cell phone and why is there no SIM card? He could not explain why. He had no answer for them. Nothing. And adding to this, Josh didn't tell his boss that he wouldn't be at work on Monday, which, like, if he had planned a camping trip, you'd think he would have, like, informed his work.
At midnight?
Well, left a message, something, or called them in the morning.
He's still taking the boys out for a camping trip at midnight, not going to be there.
Right.
What was his job, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay, whatever.
I want to say that he worked... he had a business degree. I don't know. I know that I know, but I don't have it in front of me.
That's
Sorry.
Fine. It doesn't matter.
So police were like, why wouldn't you tell your work that you weren't
You're
coming
trying
in?
to save the phone battery.
He said, well, I thought today was Sunday, not Monday. I got confused on the days. Okay. So far this story literally makes no sense to anyone. The police aren't buying it. But there's no evidence of anything. Susan's only been essentially missing for that day. So then they interview.
Still seems sketchy as fuck. You're like, hey, we're gonna test the couch, test you, tested everything.
Well, yeah. So police then interviewed his 4-year-old son Charlie, and Charlie did confirm that they did go camping, but Charlie said Susan had gone with them, and he said Susan stayed behind at a place where the crystals are. Apparently, police thought this could be a reference to a location in Utah's West Desert. I don't know. They were planning to go check it out. And then a few weeks later, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but we're going to go back to December 7th. But a few weeks later, Charlie's teacher reported to the police that Charlie said his mom was dead. Now, he's 4 years old. He also, in this interview, said something about going to the dinosaur camping place. And they had gone to this dinosaur campground, but months before. So, you can only take a 4-year-old's word at a certain... You can only put so much value on that. He's
L-Dog?
4.
L-Dog.
Who's L-Dog?
Jackie's boy?
Oh.
Yeah, he's a smart little bastard.
You're right. He is.
He's not a bastard. They're married.
Yes, he is. You're right. Lucas is very smart. And
But
people know Jackie because she's done the podcast with me before, and I've talked about him before and how incredibly bright he is. So you're right. I guess Charlie could have been similar to Lucas, and I would believe Lucas if he said, "Mom came camping with us." Like, I would trust that. So I don't know. I guess it depends on the kid. I think that you can't.
It doesn't matter. She stayed behind in the crystal.
It's weird. So the next day, Tuesday, December 8th, 11 a.m., Josh calls Susan's father to tell him that Susan is missing. And he says, police are going to question me again. I'm going back into the police station. So at 12:45 p.m., Josh is interviewed again by a detective, Ellis Maxwell. And there are clips.
Such a good detective name.
Ellis Maxwell. Yeah, it is.
Like, go in the box with that guy. He's coming out with a confession, I'm all, can I get a last sergeant detective,
So there are clips of this, and I have the webs. I'll include this all in the show notes, the links for this. There are 2 different clips. Each are about an hour long interview. You see Detective Maxwell walk into the room, and apparently he's concerned. He noticed some cuts on Josh's hands. Josh is sniffling, pretending to cry. And about 5 minutes into the first interview, Maxwell says, why do you want an attorney? And he says, so you're telling me you don't want to come in here and talk to me and answer my questions so we can try to figure out where potentially your wife could be? And Josh says, they told me I should have an attorney because they don't know what's going on. They said I'm pretty much in over my head. And Maxwell said, okay, you're in over your head because your wife is missing? And Powell says, because you guys are always already trying to trap me on little things like cuts on my hand, for one. I mean, I feel like I am the biggest, and I've said this on this podcast many times, I'm the biggest advocate for, if you get pulled into the police station, you say nothing, and the first word you say is lawyer, and you say nothing else until you have a lawyer. And I do stand by that. However, if you went missing and I had nothing to do with it and I knew that, I don't know that would be the first word out of my mouth. I think I would be distraught and wanting to tell them everything to try and help, like everything. This is what happened. This is the last time I talked to him. Here's my phone. Here's my text messages.
Well, yeah, I think if you're like completely unguilty.
Like if I'm completely innocent, I have nothing to hide. Now, I can understand wanting a lawyer.
If it's a really, really weird situation, like where like it's only you two and like if we went camping, let's say, and I woke up in the middle of the night and you were gone. Right. And I brought a hatchet and duct tape because I was trying to fix my tent. There's a situation.
Yes, you need a lawyer.
But when you have cuts on your hands and you took your boys camping at midnight with their mother and she didn't come back with you in a blizzard.
Well, that's allegedly with the mother. He said that he left her sleeping at home, remember?
Okay. Well, either way, I would lawyer up if I was that guy.
Well, right. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't eventually lawyer up because I agree. I do understand. I've watched enough Law and Order to know that they can twist something and pin it on you, even if you are completely innocent. But in like the day that you went missing or the next morning after you went missing, I don't think the first thing on my mind would be lawyer. I think the first thing on my mind would be, here's the keys to my house, my car, here's my phone, here's his mom's phone number, here's his work's phone. Like, find him.
Get to the bottom of it.
Find him. So in the second video clip, another officer enters the room and tells Joshua, your story just doesn't add up. And later in the video, Joshua has read his rights and they say, we're going to detain you, but they really don't have anything to detain him on. So he's let go later in the day. Also on this day, December 8th, Tuesday, December 8th, the family van was seized by police. And so Joshua apparently went and rented a silver Ford Focus from the Salt Lake City International Airport. Nobody knows where he went after the airport, but on the odometer, he added 800 miles. He returned the car 2 days later and added 800 miles on the odometer in that 2 day period.
He took a little trip.
Well, at some point during his trip, he purchased a cell phone and activated it in Tremonton, Utah, near the Utah-Idaho border. And about 18 hours later, he called his mom from this new phone while driving south on I-84. Apparently, he later told his sister, Jennifer, he was just driving aimlessly around Salt Lake City, going on and off the freeways, worried about his missing wife.
So concerned.
Like, where are your children? Well, that's how you be worried about your missing wife, is you just rent a car to drive around?
And have a burner phone?
Yeah, no. So the next day, Wednesday, December 9th, they execute a search warrant on the Powell home. They remove boxes of things, bags of things. They take a computer. They find traces of Susan's blood on the floor, small traces, and blood from an unknown male contributor. They found life insurance policies for Susan for $1.5 million. And they found that letter from Susan that she wrote, fearing for her life, saying, like, I
thought it was in the deposit box.
It was in a locked box in her. Well, maybe this was a different letter. I don't know. No, it was in a locked. You're right. Hold on.
You're getting fact checked.
The letter was kept in Susan's safe deposit box, which only she had access to. Well, maybe that's wrong. Maybe it was kept in a lock box in her house.
Either way, now we found the letter.
So that happened on Wednesday, December 9th. Thursday, December 10th, police go to the area where Josh said that he was camping. He gave them very specific area.
Yeah, where not to look.
Well, he gave them a very specific area where he said that they went camping. They went there. There is no evidence of a campsite, no evidence of any disturbance. Remember, it's snowing, so you would be able to tell. No campfire, no nothing. On this Thursday, December 10th, Josh also talked to a news reporter, Chris Jones, and he says, I've been trying to figure out what I can do so I don't sit idle, dealing with this repeatedly. I was just going to go... And he motions to his house behind him. He was interviewed outside his house by this news reporter. He said, I was just going to go in and get my kids. And the reporter says, how are the kids doing? Josh says, they've been doing good as far as I can tell. The reporter says, you came home and went camping. What can you tell us about that night? And Josh says, yeah, a lot of times I just go camping with my boys. Not anything big. We just go overnight. We do s'mores and stuff like that. So I just went with the boys. I was planning on doing some s'mores in the morning. And then when we got home, I found out people were worried about us and they said we were missing.
Did you even have any s'mores in the van?
I don't know. I don't think so. There was no record of that. It's snowing so bad at this point on Friday, December 11th. They are unable to. They're still searching for evidence.
Yeah, but if it's still snowing, it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, so they had to kind of stop their search temporarily with all the snow. On Saturday, December 12th, there is a vigil outside the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Hunter Central Stake Center. The sings hymns and prays and begins a 24-hour fast in hopes of Susan's safe return. Josh is seen there looking like he's trying to tear up, but he does not speak at the event.
Is he eating a sandwich?
He's not eating a sandwich.
I mean, that was kind of funny. Anyway, go ahead.
On Monday, December 14th, Josh hires defense attorney Scott C. Williams. And on Tuesday, December 15th, Josh fails to attend a scheduled third interview with officers. Police publicly go to the media and announce that he didn't show up. And they say that they told the media Josh is becoming increasingly uncooperative and he's starting to get in the way of our efforts to find his wife. They also tell the media that they are subpoenaing all footage and interviews from local news and TV stations because Josh has talked to several TV stations. His family members have. They're getting all of that. And then a few days later on Friday, December 18th, Josh took his sons to stay with his father, Stephen, in Puyallup, Washington, a 12-hour drive for the holidays because we're coming up on Christmas, December 18th, which is actually tomorrow.
I wonder how Ellis says that word or that town.
Puyallup. I think I'm saying it correctly.
The detective.
I know.
Maxwell.
I know. By Christmas Eve, Josh was officially considered a person of interest in Susan's case.
No fucking shit.
Finally. So they get through Christmas, and now we are in 2010. And it is January 6th, 2010, when Josh and his brother Michael return to West Valley City, Utah, to pack up the Powell home. Because apparently Josh has been fired from his job. I really wish I could remember what he did. I will.
Well, he didn't show up.
But he didn't show up,
He's
so he was
under
fired.
investigation.
And Josh claimed he wouldn't be able to keep the home, so that's why he was packing up the home, and he was going to move to Puyallup, Washington, and live in his father's home with his Josh's two young sons, Josh, his father, his brothers, Michael and Jonathan, and his sister, Alina, all living in a house together.
Very nice. What about his wife that's disappeared?
I mean, he left on December 18th to go for the holidays out of state while his wife is missing and had only been missing for not even 2 weeks. She'd been missing for 10 days.
Gotcha.
That is fucked up. You don't leave the state when your wife is like if I was missing and 2 weeks later you're like, well, I'm going to go see Craig and.
Well, we're not married, and I'm like, if I had a vacation planned, it's like, maybe you're just doing your own thing. Yeah.
All right.
Of course, I wouldn't.
That would be terrible.
I'd cancel my plans unless I didn't have
Thank you.
insurance to cover the costs.
No, I get it. Yeah, it'd be expensive.
What if I had plane tickets,
No, I totally understand that. The end of January, Josh returns once again to Utah to make repairs to his home so that he could rent it out. By the middle of February, Susan's family held a press conference and said, we want everyone to know that Susan had told us she was thinking about ending her relationship with Josh, and she didn't think that they'd make it to their April 6th anniversary. Susan's family also told the media that Josh had been physically abusive with her at least once and that he was extremely controlling. So now they're kind of painting this picture of him in the media that he's not a great guy. As the investigation continues, the police eventually interview Susan's younger son, Braden. Now, he was only 2, maybe going on 3 at the time. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They didn't interview him here yet. I take that back. I misspoke. This was Braden was at daycare, and he drew a picture of a van with 3 people in it. And he continued multiple times to tell the daycare teacher, Mommy was in the trunk. Yeah. Now, police at this point also are looking at family members, of course. So they turn their attention to Josh's brother, Michael, because they learned that shortly after Susan disappeared, he sold his broken down Ford Taurus to a wrecking yard in Oregon. And so they found the car eventually, and they brought a cadaver dog. Cadaver dog indicated that decomposing human remains had been in the trunk, but the DNA test proved inconclusive as to whose decomposing human remains.
Well, yeah, it's like a wrecking yard. Like, they might have chopped it up to a million
well, right.
pieces,
Yeah, and at that point, the car had already been out of his possession. So
you're kind of
somebody else could have put it in. They can't put that on him. So that was suspicious, but inconclusive. By August 25th, 2010.
I don't want to break up. It's good. But isn't it great cadaver dogs? Like, I love our dogs. When we take them on walks, all the smells.
Yeah.
There's like dogs that train. I can smell decomposing remains under the ground or in a car from a long ways away.
Well, think about how impressive it is seeing eye dogs, drug sniffing dogs. I mean, dogs are amazing.
What about Henry with the trail burrito?
Yeah, we're not telling that story in the middle of this story, but
Okay.
that's a good one.
Go ahead.
Okay. So by August 25th, 2010, the police department, West Valley City Police Department, released data related to the investigation of her case. 6,850 man hours had been used to date to search for her. $150,000 was how much this investigation had cost so far. And there were 5 full-time detectives assigned to Susan's case out of the department's 28 detectives. That's a big chunk.
That's a lot of dudes. Or people.
Now, on Monday, December 6th, 2010, it was the 1-year anniversary of her disappearance. And Josh and his dad, Stephen, made a public claim. And now you didn't hear the last episode that I did on Stephen Kocher. Stephen Kocher was a Utah man. It was the last episode I did. He went missing in Nevada in December 2009, a week after Susan.
I heard all about it. Like,
yeah, I told you about it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's like
so Josh and Stephen, because this Stephen Kocher's story was in the news as well, his disappearance, and Josh and Stephen went public saying, "Well, I think they ran away to Brazil together," because Stephen Kocher had done a mission in Brazil. They said there was no evidence of this, but it was just kind of convenient. Like another member of the LDS church also went missing, a man. So they just put it out there. They ran away together. This never went anywhere. There was no indication anywhere that they even knew each other at all. But this is just another example of like Josh and Susan Powell trying to deflect away from them.
I know the end of that other story.
Yes, you do. So over the coming months, relationships between the Powell family, Josh's family, and Susan's family becomes increasingly hostile. After police raided their home, which I actually haven't told you yet, but they eventually will raid Stephen's home in Washington. I'll tell you that in a second. But after they do that...
Is this like a Tarantino movie where like I don't know what's happening and skipping around and shit?
Come on, it's a lot of information. Josh and Stephen announced plans that they're going to post parts of Susan's teenage journals online. Journals that were allegedly written about her relationship with Stephen, Josh's dad. Stephen said
Josh and his dad are going to post this
online.
She's still missing, right?
Still missing. So
haven't found.
Stephen, her father-in-law,
fucking creep,
said, "Oh, Susan and me were falling in love before she disappeared, and I can prove it by sharing these entries from her journal when she was like 19." And he said this supports that she's mentally unstable. She easily could have run away with another man. So that's why he wants to publish these journal. You know, this is years. She's 28 when she disappears. These journals are from very young.
8 to 9 years old.
Yes. But her dad, Susan's dad, Chuck Cox, they're trying to fight this. Like, they don't want these published. And then a judge granted Josh Powell a restraining order against Susan's dad after they had an altercation at a Lowe's home improvement store. And then shortly after that, they both are given anti-harassment orders. They're not allowed to harass each other. They have to stay 500 feet apart from each other. Susan's dad and her husband.
I don't want to offend any judges out there, but... Are you fucking kidding me?
I know.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know. So, and now we get to the part, August 25th, 2011. So we're over a year that she's been missing. Police from both Utah and Washington served search warrants on Stephen Powell's home in Puyallup, Washington.
Fuck yeah.
They take computers, boxes and bags of stuff.
I imagine they found a ton of porn.
Well, I will tell you. In an interview around this time with ABC, Stephen Powell was interviewed and said, I shared a father-in-law, daughter-in-law flirting and maybe some sexual touching or whatever, but I enjoyed it, frankly. Like,
the fuck?
What a fucking weirdo. So that was August 2011, September 22nd, 2011.
He said that in an interview?
With ABC.
What?
Yeah. Yes.
Father-in-law.
Daughter-in-law flirting.
And some sexual touching.
Maybe some sexual touching. Yeah.
Okay.
September 22nd, so about a month later, police arrest Susan Powell on child pornography and voyeurism charges after police find thousands of images of young girls and women, including Susan, in various levels of undress. All the photos were taken without the girl's knowledge. Right, yeah. A lot of the photos were of two neighbor girls, children. He would shoot videos and still pictures of them as they undressed and took a shower, as they used the toilet, and had hundreds of pictures and videos of these two young girls, like 10 and younger. They also found journals in his home, and there were more than 2,000 pages across 17 notebooks detailing his love and sexual desire for his daughter-in-law. There were tons of details about how he secretly recorded her and masturbated while watching the video clips that he recorded of her, and used a handheld mirror, stuck it under the bathroom door to spy on her. And they found 4,500 images of her taken without her knowledge, including close-ups of specific body parts.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Like, what a fucking creep.
I don't even have that many images on my phone from 10 years ago.
I know. Well, I do. But yes, it's ridiculous.
You're more pictures taken than me.
Right. So the children, Charlie and Braden, are placed in state custody temporarily while police investigate to see if anyone else in the home.
Yeah, no shit. Get them the fuck out of there.
Right. Knew about these activities. So the next day, immediately, Susan's family filed to get custody of Charlie and Braden. And a judge at this point temporarily ruled that Josh and Steve is arrested now, but that Josh couldn't publish Susan's teenage diaries. So that's off the table. Thank goodness. Not that, like, what is that going to...
Really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. 4 days later, September 27th, 2011, Charlie and Braden Powell are temporarily placed with Susan's parents after the Washington Child and Family Services files a child welfare action. After 2 days in court, a judge gave the kids to them.
Confirms it.
Yep. The judge also ruled that Josh would have to move out of Stephen's home if he wanted to try and regain custody. So Josh rented a house in a place called South Hill, apparently not too far from his dad's place. But authorities said that he never actually moved into that house. He just kind of made it look like he was moving out, but he was actually still living at his dad's house. His dad's arrested, though, so I don't...
It doesn't matter. He's a fucking creep.
Yeah.
And also, until this is, like, settled, you're
right.
not allowed to see your fucking kids.
Right. So Susan's father filed a motion in court asking for the judge to appoint an actual guardian for Charlie and Braden so that a custody investigation could begin. Custody hearing was set for January 19th, 2012. So not too far away. We're in September 2011. January 2012 is just a couple months. Also around this time, one of Joshua's sisters said that she believed her brother was responsible for Susan's disappearance. We get to January 2012. They have confiscated other things from the home, from Stephen's home, and on Josh's computer, they find lots of disturbing images. Simulated child pornography, so cartoon drawings, anime type stuff but children pornography. So the rules on that are grayish. They also found lots of images of bestiality and incest. I don't have more details on that, and I honestly don't want them.
It's disturbing enough.
Yeah. Around this time as well, Joshua's brother Michael created a Google site page that claimed Susan's parents were abusing and neglecting the children and that they were colluding with the child welfare authorities. He also alleged that the police had mishandled the investigation and were harassing his brother. Susan's parents had plenty of lawyers at this point. They disputed it, and Google removed the site a few days later.
Yeah, no shit.
On February 1st, a Washington state judge ruled that 7-year-old Charlie, he's 7 at this point, 5-year-old Braden, will remain with Susan's parents. The judge ordered Josh to get a psychosexual evaluation by a court-appointed examiner. And the examiner found that Henry, hold on. God, hold on.
I got it.
Henry. Sorry, guys. Henry's laying on all the cords, and I'm getting to some important parts, so I want to make sure he doesn't pull it off. Okay. Sorry, buddy. So he was examined. He got a psychosexual examination. The examiner found that Josh has adequate parenting skills. He usually maintained pretty steady employment. And he had no criminal record.
But what about the...
Hold on. He also found that Josh had extreme narcissistic personality traits. He had an inability to admit even small personal shortcomings or weaknesses. And that what they found on his computer obviously suggests
what the fuck?
There are some sexual issues there, and he needed further examination. But from his examination, he was able to conclude and recommend that Josh was able to have supervised visits with his sons several times a week. Supervised. Okay?
I believe that psychiatrist is a fucking idiot. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say that. Like, if there's images on your computer of, like, even cartoons that you drew or someone else drew of, like, child porn.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to interview a motherfucker.
Right.
You know
You're never allowed to be around children.
Fuck you. Like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. Like, that guy if I had children, they come.
Yeah, I know.
Ridiculous.
So that was what he found. That was February 1st. So on Sunday, February 5th, 2012, is supposed to be the first supervised visit. So social worker Elizabeth Griffin arrived at Josh Powell's trailer that he was living in. He had gotten his own trailer, apparently. First supervised visit with...
It's a manufactured home.
Sorry about that. Manufactured home. I like manufactured homes, so there's no shade there when I'm saying that. First supervised visit with Charlie and Braden. When she arrives, Josh opens the door and the children run ahead of the social worker to go greet their dad. And he lets them in. They run inside, and he immediately slams the door in Elizabeth Griffin's face, in the social worker's face, and locks it. She's trying to get in. She can't. She's knocking, asking him to let her in, and she starts to smell a really strong smell of gas.
Oh, shit.
So she calls 911. What she didn't know was that inside the house, Josh was trying to kill his children, his 7-year-old and 5-year-old, with a hatchet.
What the fuck?
When he was unable to kill them with the hatchet, he set the house on fire and it exploded, and all 3 of them were killed.
Holy shit. I did not expect this.
Local authorities called this a double murder-suicide, saying that it appeared to be deliberate. The brief investigation that followed these tragic deaths confirmed that the explosion was deliberately planned. The official cause of death was actually ruled by the coroner as carbon monoxide poisoning, which is, I don't really understand.
Well, I think it's because he locked the door and tried to poison them, and they were probably trying to get away. You know?
The coroner noted that both children had serious hatchet and chopping injuries is what they called it, chopping injuries on their heads and necks. Yeah. But they did not die from those injuries. There were 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline found at the scene, and they had been poured across the entire trailer before the kids ever came inside. So he had poured gasoline over the entire house.
He was doing it.
He poured gasoline over the kids when they came in, and then he set the house on fire, and it exploded, and they were all killed.
You know what I'd like to see is the sexual psychoanalysis person who said it was cool. Do they still have a fucking job?
I hope not, but
that'd be nice if they didn't.
There's more on this. They informed Stephen is in jail, Joshua's father.
Yeah.
And when they informed him that your son and your grandchildren have been killed by your son, they're all dead, no emotion, no reaction. In fact, the only emotion he had was anger at the person who notified him. And he said, why the fuck are you telling, I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but he yelled at them. He was angry. He was like, leave me alone. I don't care. Leave me alone. And then 2 weeks later, apparently they were trying to question him, and he invoked his Fifth Amendment right, refused to answer any more questions about anything at all whatsoever. A few friends and family members of Joshua's, surprising that he had any at this point before he killed himself and his children, but he did. He emailed them just minutes before he set the trailer on fire.
The social workers showed up.
To say goodbye. He also sent an email to his local bishop telling him where to find money and how to shut off his utilities, which doesn't make sense because he blew up his house. He also had withdrawn $7,000 from his bank account the day before and had donated all of his children's toys and books to a local charity the day before. So this was obviously well planned. Not well planned, but planned.
What an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Honestly, I have so much more information, but it feels unnecessary. But so this was in February. The investigation for where Susan is still happening, of course.
So they've never found her yet.
They have not found her yet. A mine explorer says a mine 30 miles west of where Josh says he went camping had been filled up with gasoline and burned. And so police were like, okay, well, maybe he put her body in a mine and then burned it. So they're, going to start going and looking in different mines. And this came a week after court documents were released that showed that Josh had told a woman at a work party that the best place to dispose of a body is down a mine shaft. And that's a direct quote.
It's a pretty reasonable work party discussion.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I talk about that at work parties, how to bury a body.
No, how to dispose of a body.
That's right. Dispose of a body. Shortly after that, the Salt Lake City Tribune got emails that Susan had sent to friends before she disappeared, how scared she was, that he's always yelling at her, commanding her around, that he was so controlling. This was kind of like eerie foreshadowing, but one email she wrote, quote, "Every moment I step back and take stock of what I'm dealing with, it feels like a never-ending cycle, but I'm too afraid of the consequences, losing my kids, him kidnapping me, divorce, or something worse." And it was something worse. Also, he had made several moves that weren't made public until after all of this happened. He emptied Susan's retirement accounts. He canceled all of her chiropractic appointments. He canceled his children's daycare, membership. I don't know what it's called, but they were registered at daycare and he canceled that. He did that all pretty quickly after she went missing, but this wasn't made public until 2012. But to answer your question about the psychosexual therapist or whatever who said he should get visits, this obviously was a huge
fucking problem
and something that Susan's parents, while they're still looking for her and hoping that she is found or her body is found, they're also dealing with losing their two grandkids that they technically had custody of. But because this person said Josh gets supervised visits, so the kids were taken from Susan's parents by the social worker and brought to their death, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they're obviously really, this becomes a mission for them to change the laws, the rules, the stipulations for how this happens, how visitation happens. And so a 13-page report came out addressing whether the murder-suicide could have been prevented.
Don't send them over there.
Well, the report suggested that the city had sealed a lot of information.
It should be one word, said yes.
Right. That the city had sealed a lot of information about the case that may have prevented this death. The report says that if they had been able to see this sealed evidence, the police department, the city had sealed all this evidence prior to making the decision about visitation.
I know, but the guy or girl who's interviewing this guy wasn't privy to.
Yes, exactly.
So he didn't know he had cartoon child porn on his thing?
I think he did know about that, but there was...
that's it. Then
I know.
Fuck that guy or that girl, whoever it is.
But
fuck you 100%.
They are at least trying to make a case for there needs to be stricter regulations on when you are allowed to have supervised visits or visits at all. That's kind of just the beginning of that. That's in October 2012. On February 11th, 2013, approximately 1 year after Josh, Braden, and Charlie are killed, Josh's brother, Michael Powell, jumped from a parking garage in Minneapolis and killed himself, which was a problem for police because a lot of people believed that he helped Josh with the murder of Susan.
Yeah.
Supposed murder. Nobody knows at this point still.
I mean, he has the Ford Taurus and all that shit.
Right.
Focus.
Exactly. Yeah. So police had a strong suspicion that he was involved. And now Josh is dead. Now Michael's dead. And anything that either of them know dies with them.
What about Steve-O in prison?
Steve's still in prison. On July 1st, 2013, police announced the end to the active phase of their search for Susan. So she disappeared in 2009. I mean, went on for almost 4 years. They said the case is still open, 3.5 years. The case is still open, but they're not going to be actively searching anymore. One of the West Valley City manager, Wayne Pyle, said, "We have no further active leads to develop at this point. And without a crime scene, and we only have circumstantial evidence, no body, there's not a lot that can happen at this point."
Plus the two people who probably killed her
are dead.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, Josh's mom, Terry, and one of his sisters were trying to have Susan declared legally dead so they could get her life insurance.
Fucking bitches.
But Susan's parents luckily fought that and were awarded control over Susan's entire estate. She isn't dead yet. There's no body. No one has declared her dead. So finally, July 13th, 2015, remember Stephen was arrested like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. A jury finally found him guilty of possessing child pornography. And he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but was given credit for the time already served, of course.
Well, it's because the only reason they waited that long is because they were hoping he was going to give something up,
right.
But he didn't.
And he did not. In October of 2015, Susan's parents had filed a lawsuit against the state of Washington, claiming social workers did not do enough to protect their grandsons.
Yeah,
no shit. The judge said federal law provides social workers with absolute immunity from liability to make sure the courts and others can't pursue, to make sure that they can pursue justice without retribution. Now, look, that social worker who went there, that wasn't her fault. I can't imagine the guilt she's dealing with.
She was driven to be there. It's the person who said
he should have visitation, and the judges that allowed that to even be an option.
Well, also too, it's like we don't know like what he got to see, but according to your research, he knew that he had cartoon child porn on his thing.
Right? Yeah.
That means you're not allowed next to children or
ever.
near children
ever again. Yeah.
Ever.
July 2017, Susan Powell is released from prison, which just blows my fucking mind that someone who possesses that much child porn and child porn from your like you from took it. Yeah. You didn't not that one is necessarily better than the other, but not like you found it on a shitty dark web website and saved the images. You took these pictures of your neighbors. That's so dangerous. Nonetheless, he was released from prison in July of 2017. And in July of 2018, he died from heart complications at a Tacoma, Washington hospital.
Great.
Yep. And that's exactly, police were devastated because at this point, he's the only one.
Yeah, they wanted the info from him.
Yep. After his death, they found more of his journals. He was apparently an avid journal writer. And this is a little choppy, but the things that he wrote are telling. This is after he wrote these things, some of them after Susan went missing, and then some of them after he found out that Josh that his son had killed himself and the kids.
Like his prison shit.
So very shortly, well, he wrote this 14 hours after Susan disappeared because he dated and timed everything. So 12:35 a.m. on December 8th, 2009 in his journal. I am feeling sick. It is possible Susan is dead. The story is so implausible and our conversation with Josh so unconvincing that I fear the worst. The whole thing sounds so wrong, even if it had nothing to do with disposing of Susan's body. Why would anybody do that? I think he's talking about going camping.
Yeah.
Michael and Alina, Josh's siblings, are very supportive of Josh and advised him to tighten up his story as it sounds weak and unconvincing. Josh responded that police may have already tapped his phone, which was the same as saying, be careful what you say. In the last 2 weeks, Josh bought an oxyacetylene welder and a rug doctor carpet cleaner. I have no clue why he might want a welder.
It's an oxyacetylene.
Oh, okay. Oxyacetylene. He says, I have no clue why. What is that? Just a welding something? Welder. He says, I have no idea why he might want a welder, but now I wonder if it was required for the process of mutilating or disintegrating her body. I doubt Susan is alive, and I doubt Josh's hands are clean. Then after the kids, his grandkids and Josh died, if I could only turn back time, I want Josh to be with his boys, but I'm also angry with him for murdering such a beautiful woman. That he could do such a thing once suggests that he could do it again. He wrote this before the kids were killed. If things go too badly, he could murder the boys and hang himself because he tried to hang himself when he was a teenager. So all of those things are in Stephen's journals, which are, again, it's not evidence, but it's not great.
I feel like it's pretty, it's a lot of evidence.
So we're almost at the end here, but so January 10th, 2019, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that Susan's family can pursue a wrongful death lawsuit against Washington State's Department of Social Health Services. So they overruled the lower courts. The lower court said, no, you can't. Yeah. They said, yes, you can. But they upheld the fact that social workers involved were immune. So the whatever her name was.
It's a money thing.
And
right? You can get money? Like, fuck that.
So Susan's parents apparently repeatedly asked the Department of Social Health Services to not allow the children to be in the custody of Josh, to not allow them to see Josh, because he was still the main suspect in Susan's disappearance. They didn't, obviously, Department of Social and Health Services didn't listen. Susan's family continued, as they're pursuing this lawsuit, they're also pressuring state lawmakers to pass bills that restrict or block visitation rights for parents being investigated for murder. I got goosebumps saying that. Shouldn't that be a fucking given?
Well, it's like this. Like if you get if you get an indictment for murder or drugs or anything like that, like you go on to pretrial or you're in jail during it.
Right.
Like yes, if they indict you, but they're
he's not. He's just investigation.
I understand that, but also too, it's like it could be harmful to the family where it's like, oh, like my dad was taken away from me, but
I'm sorry, if you're being investigated for murder until you're cleared, you should not be allowed.
I know exactly, and I'll be the devil's advocate on this one. Is that maybe, but. The child porn
thing, yeah.
And yes. It's also like pretty sketchy. It's like, what? Can we give it like a few weeks or something? Okay, Let's figure that out.
I'm so glad you brought that up because in 2019, a Salt Lake City radio station produced a podcast series, and I did listen to part of this a long, long time ago. Stop, Indiana, called about Susan's disappearance, called Cold. And they disclosed for the first time that the incestuous cartoon porn found by West Valley City Police was not Joshua's. The images were found on a computer that actually belonged to Susan and had been viewed by the computer's previous owners, fellow members of her LDS church congregation, from whom she had purchased the computer secondhand. The host of this podcast declined to identify the original owners, which makes my blood boil because these people are in possession of, I don't care if it's cartoon porn, it's incestuous child cartoon porn. You should be disclosing who that is. But the host of the podcast declined to identify the original owners of the computer because he knew them because he talked to them to make his podcast. So no criminal charges were ever filed, which just blows. If you know who owned this computer, it blows my mind.
Fucked up.
Finally, in 2020, I have a lot of information. I don't think that it's necessary to share it all on this. The ultimate ruling. Susan's parents are still suing the state.
Yeah.
And the state awarded them $98 million for the death of their two grandkids who were killed by Josh. They ruled that the state was negligent. It was supposed to protect the two boys during the supervised visit, and they didn't. And so they awarded $57 million for the pain and suffering of each boy, and $8.2 million for each child for the father's liability. So it was just over $98 million that they were awarded.
Yeah, it's been on private detectives find out who had that porn originally.
I mean, you
could find them with $98 million.
For sure. And people are still looking. In 2022, a cave exploration crew led by Dave Sparks took on the task of searching a mine shaft in the Utah desert, hoping to find her remains. They uncovered several rib bones, human vertebrae, scraps of clothing, and other items. But when they sent the remains to a lab for testing, none of the bones belonged to Susan Powell. Many of the bones were animal remains. The pants that they found and scraps of clothing tested positive for male DNA. Apparently, the family is now working to try and identify who that man is. And most recently and finally, in 2024, the Utah legislature passed HB 272, which is called Alms Law, to reform the state family court system. The law now requires courts to consider evidence of domestic violence and other forms of abuse when making child custody decisions. The law is named for Gandhi, a 16-year-old boy who was killed by his father in 2023 after he was in a child custody dispute over him.
Well, at least that lawsuit helped accelerate things,
Well, I mean, at least, and just like I have a quote here from Susan's father. He says, "Nothing can bring back the boys, but this is the end of a nightmare, and it's gratifying to hear a jury tell the state that they were wrong and to award a verdict that will force them to change the culture and make sure this doesn't happen to other children in the future." And I can only imagine that $98 million, they seem like good people. I mean, I don't know what they've done with that money since then. I know that they do have a fund in Susan's name, I believe, for domestic violence. I should know that specifically, but I believe that's what it's for. I can only imagine that they're going to put a good chunk of that money to good use for.
Yeah, I would think so.
But Susan has never been found. And, it was just, she disappeared in December 2009. It's December 2024. I can't do that fast math that quickly.
It's probably pretty obvious.
It's 25 years.
She was killed. Yeah, I mean, likely.
Not 25 years. I'm sorry. That's incorrect math.
Your math is terrible.
2009 to 2024.
That is how many years?
I don't know. My brain is shot after doing this.
It's like whatever years.
Yeah, I'm assuming she's. I think everyone is assuming that she is unfortunately dead. But I mean, it would be nice if her family could know that for sure and find her body and now I understand after researching this, and like I said, there's so much information on this. I mean, there are multiple entire books written on this case, so there is quite a bit, I'm sure, that I left out. But even just this small amount, now I understand why there's so many books written about it and movies and documentaries. I mean, it's a horrific story, and it's sad because I don't feel bad for Joshua, and I hate his father. That's a strong word, but I do feel that way. But his father was abused, was kidnapped when he was it shows you exactly how it gets passed down if you don't do something to change that. in yourself, to get help for yourself. If you've been abused or if you've suffered a terrible childhood, if you don't try and work that out, that it can so easily be passed.
Well, it's just like his siblings,
on.
like they're all fucked up too. They're all, let's get the life insurance. It's like, really?
Just so terrible. So, hopefully I did that story a little bit of justice. I would love to have been able to, I would love to spend more time on it. And also at the same time, I know it's been told so many times that I don't know what I was going to say to it. That I don't know. I could tell. I don't think I can tell it better than some of the other people who have told it, but it seems like an important story to tell, and very sad. And my heart breaks for Susan's parents to have lost their daughter and their 2 young grandsons. I can't imagine. So I hope they took that money and bought a small island for themselves to enjoy the rest of their life, and donated some to help people.
Yes.
Anyways, we'll wrap it up because it is dinner time, and this was a heavy one, so I think we need to shake it off and do something lighthearted. Thank you for joining me for this. I appreciate it.
You said it was an intense story, and I was like, okay, but it was pretty intense.
It's a pretty intense story. Yeah, it's not a happy one.
I think I've heard something about it, but I've never actually heard the whole story.
I had never heard anything about it, surprisingly. For as much as I love true crime TV and movies, I guess I really haven't listened to that much true crime. So, not true crime. I'm sorry. I love crime, investigative, police-based TV and movies. It doesn't have to be true. So I think I don't know any of the stories I've told. So, I mean, this is going to be episode 89?
Well, it's like this, like, like in the 90s, like, that was in Utah, like, about, when was this? Like,
2009.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
This was, there was internet. We could have known about this.
I know, but I was, like, just, like, ending high school, like.
I was in Atlanta in 2009. We're moving to Atlanta in 2009. I had just graduated from NAU.
I remember, like, the Mendez brothers and shit like that.
Well, I remember that too because my mom had that on in the kitchen in Chicago when I was like little. Kitchen. Yeah, exactly. And that little teeny TV we had in the kitchen. All right. Well, I got to post this tonight. This has to be published right now. So no editing. I hope that there was not a ton of mouth sounds on this episode for me. Remember, don't do that.
I remember you doing
People
that.
hate that.
Oh, sorry.
People hate that. I'm not cutting that out, but well, and the TV just went on. Weird.
And it was totally off, like literally off.
It was literally off and it just turned on. Anyways, happy holidays to everyone. Mark and I are going to be back at some point before Christmas with a holiday episode game extravaganza, which I know half of you will hate and half of you will love, but we're going to do it. And for those of you who don't listen to that, and like I said, no new crime story next week. We're taking Christmas week off of crime. And I hope everyone has a beautiful, beautiful holiday, whatever you may celebrate. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Mark, for joining me. And
thank you, Margot, for telling the great story.
You're a great, terrible story.
Oh, great, terrible story.
Yeah. And I'll be back after Christmas with a new murder story. And that's it. I'm not going to blabber on. We're going to say goodbye. Goodbye. Good night.
Goodbye.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.